Hi, everybody. A little housekeeping. I am indeed the CEO of a blockchain protocol company called Dispatch Labs. We're producing a native blockchain protocol that deals with data management and data analytics. Blockchain's a confusing technology. I'm not really going to get deeply into it. I'm here to talk about why I came out of retirement to do this blockchain thing. Let's go on the Wayback Machine. So indeed, I did interview at Google. I moved out to San Francisco in 94, 95, right after college, and backed into technology. I graduated with a history degree and a poli-sci degree. And backed into this consulting role, learned a lot about technology, hated the company I worked for, decided to quit, decided to start my own thing. Sounds very familiar to any entrepreneur in this space. I couldn't work for somebody else. And I started a company called Rocket Science Consulting. But before that, I was looking at opportunities. I sat down in a room with the founders of Google, indeed, and was interviewing for a network engineering job. I started my career in network engineering. And we were talking about mail servers and routers, and I asked them how they're going to make money in search. And they told me. And I said, you're never going to make any money in that. I was wrong. That was my first strategic mistake in my life. And I also thought, if they're right, what they're going to end up doing is kind of gross. They're going to take our data, they're going to monetize it, we're going to get free search. That sounds great, but I could see a future where that just wouldn't work out. And I think we're all kind of coming to the same conclusion, where if the Facebooks and the Googles and the Amazons of the world have a lot of power, a lot of control, they centralize our data, and we don't really get much say over that. We don't have data sovereignty over that. So I left that. They offered me the job, by the way. I turned them down. I then started Rocket Science, a company that provided IT services to every other startup you've ever heard of, like the Foursquares, Facebook, Twitter, Airbnb, Lyft, Uber, FireUber. All these companies do the same thing. They're all data brokers. They all gather data. Tesla's not, their market cap doesn't come from being a car company. Their market cap comes from gathering data. Autonomous vehicle data is the next generation of important data. And so I profited greatly over the last 15 to 20 years off the business model that I kind of rejected. And I didn't really realize that. I was so busy building Rocket Science up. We were quite successful. We had offices here in LA and San Francisco. And I sold it in 2014. And I retired. And I don't put air quotes around that. I really did retire. I have a big family. I have 6 kids. My wife is here somewhere in the audience. And we had a newborn. And I wanted to be a full-time dad. And I would say that I was great at retirement. I think my wife would disagree. But I became an angel investor, a pretty prolific angel investor. And I invested in almost no technology companies at all. By the time I sold Rocket Science, I was sick of tech. In the era of 2012 to 2014, it was all like an Uber of a Postmate, of an Airbnb. They were all kind of reductive. And there was no innovation left in it, so it wasn't very interesting to me. And I invested in a yogurt company because I like to eat yogurt. I invested in a snowboard company because I snowboard. And I wasn't expecting huge returns here, but I did make the second strategic mistake in my life. I invested in a company doing something very deep tech, royalty leakage, which sounds like a disease from the late 90s. They are monitoring and managing royalty leakage, which you could utilize blockchain. They came back from a blockchain event, and this is late 2016, so before the hype. They came back to the office, and I was their advisor, and they asked me whether they should use blockchain. I said, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I've been out of the game for a little while. I'm bouncing on a yoga ball with a baby. And I said, I'll take the weekend and look up on it. Well, anyone here in blockchain knows that's the last time you'll ever think about anything other than blockchain. So by the end of the weekend, I had shark eyes, and my wife was lying next to me in bed saying, you're going to start a company, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm going to start 2. And I did. So Dispatch came out of that. I think everyone here can see its tie back to that Google interview. It is building a protocol. We are about to release, actually, this month, the protocol that will allow companies to manage and monitor and analyze data without actually having access to any of it. So pharmaceuticals, for instance, companies could gather all of your DNA data, not know any single person's DNA data, yet build therapeutics off of that. That's math magic that I don't understand. You can talk to my CTO about it, but that's pretty great. So data sovereignty and data privacy are built into Dispatch. We also have a company called, ominously titled The Bureau, which is an incubator in San Francisco. We own a commercial space there, and we're hosting dozens of blockchain projects. So why the heck did I come out of retirement to do blockchain, which is, by the way, far harder than rocket science. It's the hardest thing that I've ever done, and I think I work harder at this than I've ever worked before. Blockchain's like a global public company from the day that you start it because of just the very structure. So why blockchain captivated me was simple. I don't care about the tech. I think the tech is interesting in an intellectual way, but I think that the economic incentive layer that lays above the technology it enables entirely new business models. It can change the way that Google works. Google can still do what they do. Facebook can still show you cat videos because you like cat videos, but they don't know anything about you, so you can have your privacy. That's a whole new business model. That enables them to keep doing what they're doing, or it enables somebody to come and disrupt them. And I think with GDPR in Europe and HIPAA here, GDPR in California coming online in 2020, it's a gigantic market opportunity, but that's not really why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I don't think that business models from the last 100 years are sustainable anymore. I think that the shareholder maximization tenets of the last 50 years specifically suck. I think that they're extractive, and I think that blockchain enables a different way to do business, fundamentally. So that's my why. Blockchain's like so hot. I wanted to set aside a lot of time for QA. So that's my presentation. So bring me questions.
So we have one in the back. Zio, I'm going to take advantage of having the microphone. So did you ever calculate?
Say again?
Did you ever calculate how much that Google stock would have been worth?
No, I don't. I tend not to do that. Don't want to do that. I could have done a lot with blockchain with that much money.
So we see a lot of students on campus who are very
Cornell's
excited.
#1 in blockchain education.
#1. And it seems like blockchain's the answer to every question.
It's not.
So people are hungry for pizza, blockchain, right?
Yes.
So what is blockchain not the answer to? How can entrepreneurs that are interested in blockchain say, you know what, this is a direction that I should go with this technology or not? So, any kind of heuristics they can use?
Great question. I got into this space before the hype was so big. I started working in it in last March or last April, before the ICO craze and all that. So I met a lot of real wild-eyed true believers, right? So blockchain is going to cure, literally somebody sat in my kitchen and said blockchain is going to cure world hunger in 2 years. That's not true. I think that there's 3 different parts to the industry. One is the philosophical underpinning of decentralization, where big centralized companies don't have to own everything. That's what people get really passionate about. That's the religion. Then there's the tech, and then there's the economic incentive layer. So I think that the decentralization thing has to be divorced from the tech and the blockchain piece. I think there's plenty of things that I don't need Postmates to be decentralized. I don't need, there's a lot of things that don't benefit from it directly. Although, there's a lot of things that don't have to be on this either, right? So there's a lot of things that mobile didn't really fundamentally change, but now it's easier to do stuff on mobile. So I think blockchain is just a new computing platform that enables business models that are better, but doesn't replace this, doesn't replace everything else.
So blockchain has kind of been like this black box, ominous type of term that people throw out. So how do you convince people that their data is actually secure with a technology they don't fully understand?
How do you convince it in the cloud? So I've been through a couple economic cycles and a couple tech cycles. So I remember when people told me that I was crazy, I will never put my email in the cloud. Now everything is in the cloud, right? So I don't think that, I don't want to go ahead and convince people. As an entrepreneur, I want to find people who believe in it and then build from there.
So can you talk a bit more about the business model that you are planning to make happen in terms of your customers and
Sure.
revenue model and kind of the basics?
For Dispatch?
Yeah.
or for any
Yeah.
blockchain protocol?
No, for your company.
So that's complicated. Dispatch in particular is an open source protocol. Our business model is to give the product away. And so much like Red Hat just got acquired for $34 billion, open source doesn't mean you're not going to make any money off of it. But there are, without getting in, I'll go into a couple specifics. We're producing 18 billion tokens this month. Those tokens are a software license and essentially a meter of bandwidth on our network, which we actually have two parallel networks. We have a consensus, like a database layer, and a decentralized storage layer that are tied together with a virtual machine. So to guarantee throughput on that network to do the thing that you're doing, because it's really an application platform, you have to buy a certain number of tokens. So our company is producing 18 billion. We've already got investors that own some of the staff own some, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a foundation that holds some for developers, so student developers, come at me. Those are free. And then large enterprises are building on us already. We've got Fortune 500 customers, which is a rarity in the blockchain space. And they're buying tokens to guarantee bandwidth on our network. After those tokens are sold from our treasury, we don't own the network anymore. Everybody that holds the tokens does. So in essence, it's like TCP/IP. It's just another protocol for a network. The Bureau has a business model where there's an advisory and an incubator. That's a whole different thing. That's well-worn territory. And we are experts in dispatch. We're agnostic. We use other protocols too. But that's a whole different revenue model.
Okay, so I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
So first of all, regarding shareholder value maximization, what you said, I say preach.
Right on.
And my question is, so as a person collecting data through, let's say, through your platform, I still have access to a lot of data, and there's still a chance, I think, that I could still identify people by the fact that their data is unique, even though they're anonymized. So my question is, what data can companies still access through this platform, and how much insight are they losing?
Sure. Great question. My CTO would answer it better than I will, but I'll try. So we're not querying particular data about you. We're querying data about everybody, aggregate data, and getting complex queries back. So it's not just yes or no. So pharmaceutical is like I'm like, oh, this could really transform pharma from being like this big evil behemoth to something that's kind of more equitable, and you can own your healthcare data. Everyone here can own their DNA data, for instance, and yet that data could still be used for therapeutic purposes for the benefit of everybody. They don't have to know your specific data. They're going to get answers back about a large set of data. They're not going to know anything particular about you. Or in the Facebook version of that, they're going to be able to know that the cat videos are trending, and the videos that you see are going to be specific to you without them, the company, knowing anything about you. Now that's built into the applications they're building, right? So they could give themselves access to that data. But in a tokenized economy where you're holding some of these tokens too, you have to get paid to give that data up or to make that data available and not private. Does that make sense?
What happens if you have one person who buys up all of the tokens? There's that concern with Bitcoin that if you have one group that achieves 51% majority, then you can have a problem.
Then that's bad news, is the short answer. I think that decentralization is great. I think Bitcoin's not decentralized because most of the Bitcoins in the world are held by very few people. Our protocol, by the way, we're not decentralized in the beginning. I don't think that I've built software platforms for big companies before. You don't just build something, release version 1.0 and kick it to the curb and say, good luck, community. That's what EOS famously just did, and it's a shit show. So I would say that we're over 18 to 24 months divesting ourselves of centralized control. We have one fairly large token holder that is also giving those tokens away to products and platforms that he and his group like. But there's nothing we could do if somebody comes along and buys it all up, except that nobody would use it then. And one more, I think you said?
how do you convince Google to start using your backend, and how would you convince people to start caring about their privacy? And also, how does the power usage of this system compare to like just a standard network?
What's the last part?
The power, like literally the calculation
So
power.
ours isn't power or proof of work, so we take up very little energy.
Okay.
Bitcoin takes up a lot of energy. Famously, we don't take up very much at all. Great question. So you don't convince Google by going and selling them. There are companies that care about privacy, and there are companies that don't. We've actually talked to one of the largest companies in the world that really cares about privacy, and they're interested. So that's just great. Google has not actually, we're partnered with Google on a couple different areas and partnered with Facebook on a couple different areas. But you know how you convince them to do something different? Build a company. Go right at their business model. Be a better Google.
Okay, thanks so much,
Yeah.
Mark.